When I was a child, English always felt like a distant star, bright, beautiful, but far beyond my reach. People around me seemed comfortable with their simple phrases. Hello, how are you? I'm fine. Yet whenever I tried to speak, the words tangled on my tongue. I remember sitting in a classroom, listening to my teacher speak English with such ease, while I struggled just to understand what she said. I wondered how something that sounded so soft and rhythmic could feel so heavy in my mouth. Everything changed the day I met Arjun. He had moved from another city and spoke English like he had been born with it. I admired him, not because he sounded Western, but because he sounded confident. One evening after school, he found me sitting alone, struggling with a sentence from the English textbook. He sat next to me and asked, "Do you want to speak better English?" His question made me laugh. Of course I wanted to. Who didn't? But something about the way he asked made me feel like it was actually possible. Arjun said, "English is not difficult. It just needs friendship. If you treat English like an enemy, it will push you away. But if you treat it like a friend, it will come closer." I didn't understand fully, but his words stayed with me. He then suggested something simple. Start speaking, without worrying about mistakes. I thought he was joking. Speak without fear? Impossible. You speak only when you're sure you're right. That's what I believed. But Arjun insisted I try. The next day, during lunch, he challenged me to speak only English with him for 10 minutes. I hesitated, but he smiled and said, "Just try." I said, I want to eat food." He laughed, not to mock me, but with a warmth that made me relax. He corrected me lightly. "I want to eat food," I repeated after him. We continued, slowly building sentences. I made mistakes, many mistakes, but every correction felt like progress. A few weeks later, Arjun invited me to his home. His father was a professor of English literature. When I met him, he didn't ask me to memorize grammar rules or recite sentences. He simply asked me to tell him about my day. I stumbled, searching for words, but he listened patiently. When I paused, he helped me find the right expressions. He told me that language grows when it is used, not when it is trapped inside notebooks. His father shared a technique. Learn 5 new words daily and use them in sentences throughout the day. That sounded manageable. So I began collecting words, simple ones at first. Explore, follow, enjoy, promise, support. Every day I tried to use them in real life. Instead of "let's go," I said, "let's explore this place." Instead of "I will try," I said, "I promise I will do it." Slowly, my sentences became richer. My confidence grew, but I realized something else. Speaking English is not only about words, it's about thinking in English. At first, I translated every sentence from my mother tongue before speaking. It made me slow and awkward, but Arjun advised me to imagine situations in English. If I was walking to the market, I described the scene in English in my mind. If I was talking to myself, I tried to think in English. My thoughts became lighter, my sentences smoother. One afternoon, Arjun took me to a small library where we discovered a treasure. English storybooks written in simple language. He told me to read aloud. This felt strange at first, but reading aloud helped my tongue get used to English sounds. I read simple stories about friendship, animals, travel. I didn't understand every word, but I understood enough to keep going. The unfamiliar words didn't scare me anymore. They felt like new friends waiting to be understood. Soon I started watching English stories online with subtitles. The more I listened, the more familiar the rhythm became. I realized English is not about speaking fast. It's about speaking clearly. I observed how speakers use simple sentences. They didn't try to show off vocabulary. They kept it natural. One day at school, our teacher announced a storytelling competition. My heart raced. I had never spoken English in front of a crowd, but Arjun encouraged me. Just speak your truth. The language will follow. With trembling hands and a pounding heart, I stepped onto the stage. I spoke about my village, its mango trees, friendly neighbors, and the rains that turned the fields green. My English wasn't perfect, but the audience listened. When I finished, they clapped warmly, not because I was flawless, but because I dared to speak. That day, I understood the real secret. English grows when you let it flow. Mistakes are not enemies, they are guides. When you make a mistake, it shows you where to improve. Months passed, and my English improved more every day. I learned through practice, not just study. I spoke with friends, watched English shows, read small articles, wrote short paragraphs about my day. Each activity became a brick, building my confidence. I discovered that language is not a subject, it's a habit. One evening, I sat with Arjun on the terrace. The sky was pink, and a breeze carried the smell of jasmine. I told him, I used to think English was a mountain, but now it feels like a road. A long road, yes, but a road I can walk. He smiled and said, exactly. You don't need to reach the end today, just keep walking. Today, when I look back, I realize English didn't change my identity. It simply expanded it. It gave me a new voice to express old feelings. It connected me to new people, new stories, new dreams. And whenever someone asks me how to learn English, I tell them what Arjun told me. Treat English like a friend. Speak without fear. Think in English. And keep learning every single day. Because English is not about perfection. It is about expression. And the journey is beautiful. The English Cafe. When I first heard about the English Cafe, I thought it was just an ordinary place to drink tea and sit quietly. But soon I realized it was far more than that. It became the place where I learned to speak English in a way I never imagined. I was always nervous about English. In school, I memorized grammar rules and vocabulary lists. But when someone actually spoke to me in English, my mind froze. I could barely reply with more than 2 or 3 words. I wanted to learn, but I didn't know where to begin. One day, my cousin told me about a small cafe in town where people practiced English together. He said, "You don't need to be perfect. You just talk." His words sounded simple, but the idea of speaking openly in front of strangers felt terrifying. Still, curiosity pushed me forward. I decided to visit. The cafe was small and warm, with wooden tables, yellow lights, and books stacked on shelves everywhere. A sign near the counter read, "Speak English. Make friends." I watched people chatting, laughing, and telling stories in English. Some spoke fluently, others searched for the right words. No one judged anyone. That gave me courage. A girl named Mira welcomed me. She was the cafe host, wearing a bright smile that felt like sunshine. She asked my name, and without thinking too much, I replied, "My name is Rohan." She nodded and said, "Great. Let's talk." We sat at a round table with 3 others. She encouraged everyone to introduce themselves. Some spoke confidently, others struggled like me. Mira gave us a simple exercise: talk about our day. When my turn came, I didn't know how to start. My heart beat too fast. But I remembered why I was there. To learn. I began slowly. I told them I had college that morning. I met my friend, and we had lunch. It wasn't impressive, but they listened carefully. When I finished, everyone praised my effort. They weren't laughing, they were encouraging. After that, we played small games. One game was describing a picture. Another was storytelling, using 5 random words. At first, I felt awkward, but little by little, I began speaking more. Not perfectly, but bravely. The cafe became a place where mistakes didn't matter. What mattered was trying. Soon I started visiting every evening. The sessions were never boring. Sometimes we debated topics like technology and travel. Other times we discussed movies or personal dreams. There were days we practiced pronunciation, repeating difficult words until they felt natural. Some evenings we read short English stories aloud. We laughed when someone mispronounced a word, but it was friendly laughter, full of kindness. One afternoon, Mira gave us an assignment: speak only English for 30 minutes. No switching to our mother tongue. It was challenging. My thoughts still came in Hindi first. I had to translate in my head, and that slowed me down. But Mira told us something important. Stop translating. Start thinking in English. It sounded impossible at first, but I tried. When I sat on my bike going home, I started describing the road in English in my mind, the shops, the vehicles, the evening sky. It felt strange, but slowly my mind began to respond. At home, I practiced with my younger sister. She didn't speak English well, but she laughed and tried. I watched English videos with subtitles and repeated sentences I liked. I listened to how words were spoken, the tone, the rhythm, the feeling. It was like learning music. One evening, something special happened at the cafe. A traveler from Spain visited. He didn't know Hindi, so everyone spoke only English to communicate with him. At first I stayed quiet, but when he asked where he could find good local food, I tried to answer. I told him about my favorite restaurant and what dishes he should try. He understood me. He thanked me. I felt proud. For the first time, I used English with someone who truly needed it. It made me realize that English connected me to the world beyond my town. After weeks passed, Mira announced an event, an open mic night. Anyone could share a story or poem in English. The very idea terrified me. Speaking in a group was one thing, but speaking on a stage felt impossible. My mind filled with doubt. What if I forgot my words? What if they laughed? That night, I almost didn't go, but I reminded myself why I started: to speak English confidently. So I prepared a small story about my grandmother and her way of telling jokes. I practiced it many times, standing in front of a mirror. When the day came, the cafe was full. People clapped for every speaker. Some were amazing, some were nervous, but everyone was respected. When my name was called, my hands felt cold. I stepped onto the small stage. For a moment, I couldn't speak. But then I saw Mira smiling. That gave me courage. I began slowly, telling my story. I made a few mistakes. I paused often, but no one seemed to care. They listened. They laughed at the funny parts. When I finished, they clapped loudly. A warmth spread across my chest. I felt like I had climbed a mountain. After the event, the The traveler from Spain came to me and said, "Your story was beautiful." His words meant more than anything. They showed me that English was no longer a barrier. It had become a bridge. Months later, I realized my life had changed. I could speak English wherever I went, at college, in shops, with strangers. I wasn't fluent like a native speaker, but I was confident. I understood that English is not just grammar and vocabulary. It is expression. It is connection. I learned that to speak English, you don't need perfection. You need practice. You need patience. You need courage. At the English cafe, I found all three, and I found friends who walked the same journey. Today, whenever someone asks me how to speak English, I tell them about the cafe. I tell them to speak without fear. Listen carefully, read everything, think in English, and enjoy the process. Because learning a language is like growing a garden. It takes time, but every word you speak is a seed. And one day, you realize your garden is full of beautiful sentences.